Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome, Bruchim Habaim, and let us say Amen. I was joking. Okay. um, those of you who live locally and don't come to B'nai Torah understand that although this morning is exceptional, it's not exceptional. Every morning is quite grand and very, very beautiful, with great depth and aesthetically pleasing and very meaningful. So come again. I want to comment on two things related to Madison's speech. One has to do with her understanding of this connection to community, connection to family, community in Israel. And I want to tell you a story about a place that I was last Sunday. Is Irv Levy here? Is Irv Levy here? Okay, Irv Levy is 95 years old, and he joined the synagogue recently. He's been coming for about 2 months, and he comes here driving on one of those three-wheeled scooters from the assisted living across the street. And he comes every single day. And he invited some people to an open house that he was sponsoring at the assisted living place. And I got there Sunday afternoon, and there was many more people than I expected. People from B'nai Torah, but also people from his former synagogue. He used to go to synagogue in Boynton Beach, and then his adult children moved him to Boca. They moved him to Boca to find the right place for him to live, but also they chose a place based on its proximity to a synagogue, because Irv Levy, only for the past year in his life, was coming to synagogue every single day. A year ago, his wife of 72 years passed away, and he was totally bereft. And he didn't know where to go, and he didn't know where to turn, and his life was his wife. And so he started to go to synagogue in Boynton, and then when his kids moved him here, he started to come here. He gave a speech. His speech was really incredible, totally on the point, very funny and reflective of what his life has become. He gave thanks to two communities, and he said it is the connection to community that has enabled him to survive and has kept him alive. It is in our connection to people. It is in our connection to community. It's in our connection to communities of meaning that gives life a texture, a richness, and a beauty. And Irv spoke of that so beautifully last Sunday. The second thing I want to tell you is that, and I thought about this as the Torah was going around the ark, that we have these beautiful menorot on the walls here. Replicas of those menorot are found on the army base Mishmar HaNegev. That's the base where the Feingold family built the shul. And as a connection to their home community, they had the replicas of these menorot built, and it's a really beautiful tie between that place and that place, which has had such great importance in the recent past in this synagogue. There are deep connections that can be found in our association with and affiliation with synagogue life. Well, again, Shabbat Shalom. I will tell you that I love to dream, and I love dreamers. They often represent a type of optimism. And we know that there are different types of dreams. They're the dreams that come from our subconscious level, a subconscious level that express either desires or fears. Freud referred to some dreams as wish fulfillment. And then there are those dreams that speak in full consciousness about our aspirations, not necessarily dreams that take place when we're asleep, but when we're awake and our eyes are wide open. Theodore Herzl was a dreamer. Martin Luther King was a dreamer. John F. Kennedy was a dreamer. I've been thinking about this, and then the idea was really inspired even more deeply by Dan Oren yesterday. I wish we lived in a world, he said, with prophets. And I would say, I wish we lived in a world with more dreamers. Everyone seems to agree that our world is so troubled. And most leaders have gone to their particular corners to determine what's best for their own interests or the values that they wish to be fulfilled. However, few express the dreams of a better world. Few express dreams of peace. Last week we read that Jacob woke from his dream and he exclaimed, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh, v'anochi lo yadati. The old God is in this place with me, and I didn't even know it. It opened a big discussion about where God can be found. This week we'll talk about, and we've been talking about very different types of dreams. Dreams that are filled with tension, and dreams that include battles. You know, I feel very fortunate in many ways. I share that with many of you who come here, who engage in the reading and the study of Torah. Because when our hearts and minds are open to our primary text, we think of so many different issues and things and elements in life. And then we're inspired to grow understanding. Unfortunately, most don't either have or take the opportunity for it, unless you come on a Shabbat like this morning, but it's here for us. Too many read the text and don't have the experience or the ability to enter into its world and understand we should never take it literally. It has to be interpreted. And more than that, every single reader has the opportunity to interpret it for himself or herself, and thus enter into this world of Torah and bring himself or herself to the text. And then that allows this Eitz Chaim, this tree of life, to continue to grow. It allows it to deepen our lives and our experiences. I'll repeat a story I told once before from this bima. It was an experience that was written about by the late Rabbi Lawrence Kushner of Sudbury, Massachusetts. That Rabbi Kushner died way too young, but he taught so many. He told the story of bringing the kids from his Sunday school into the sanctuary. And he knew that you could teach in the sanctuary from different parts of its space and its symbols. He talked about the bima. He spoke about the ner tamid and the menorot. And he asked these little kids a question. He said, what do you think is behind those doors? And one little wise guy blurts out, a new car. And another kid said, nothing. And a third said, I think there's a mirror there. And Kushner liked that answer because although he believed that the Torah was not meant to encourage narcissism, we were challenged to find ourselves in the text that we read, to learn something, not just about the stories, but how we can grow from these stories. How do they speak to us, and how do they speak to our lives? And can we bring ourselves to the story and allow the story to enrich us? Can we expand meaning and interpretation? Madison, that's what you did this morning. We recognize that. And it's what we're all challenged to do. As a young rabbi, I believed my work was to teach the narratives, to teach the words. And as I've aged, I've wanted to find myself and help you find yourselves in these words. So these weeks I'm thinking a lot about the meaning of dreams. There are many of our forefathers who dream. And the mirror which I hold up is showing a different reflection. Interestingly, a few days ago, my wife Toby referred me to the work of Rabbi Sharon Brous, what she has been speaking about and teaching. Sharon is one of the great rabbinic leaders in the country. She's the rabbi of Ikar, a progressive community in Los Angeles. She's extremely insightful, and she's very, very intelligent. She's a very compassionate woman, and she's a very passionate woman who teaches a Torah responding to today's challenges. Sharon and I have shared teachers, and we share an approach that is values-based. And that calls on the student of the text to challenge the reading often and to add to the reading frequently. And in order to parse our values, it's often necessary to push back against the reading or to add to the reading or to say, it's not for us. Thursday morning, as we were having coffee, Toby told me about Sharon Brous again. The irony was, it was the same Parsha 3 years ago where she told me about it. So I listened to Brous, and I heard her speak about the relationships between Yitzchak and Ishmael. Brous pointed out that in the Torah text itself, there's very little presented that makes Ishmael a bad guy. Similarly with Jacob and Esau, there's not a lot there that makes Esau a bad guy. Was the guy bad because he was a hunter in a world where people depended on hunting for food? Commentators read the text backwards to justify Ishmael's banishment and the ongoing conflict in relation to a brother teasing another brother. No great sin there either, that's with Ishmael. They saw Ishmael as being the progenitor of a people that were always at war with Israel. And so they found the reason to diss Ishmael. Then Brous points to the dangers of carrying negative stories from generation to generation, kind of like what Madison was saying about how we carry hurts and wounds. Sometimes they're based on a single incident in the past, and that often entraps us into ongoing narratives and perceptions which don't allow us to create change in relationships which may be toxic. Members of this congregation have heard me speak about this in my work as a rabbi. I'm with families in a rather intense way at the time of death. Families live with grudges because of a misspoken word, sometimes a misunderstood act. And the net result is that there's no communication for years. Time is wasted. Relationships are lost. Pain is created. And sometimes when digging a little deeply, I found out that the event itself is forgotten. They don't know why. This week we read about the culmination of this other troubled relationship between two brothers. And this week it's Jacob and Esau. Esau was a hunter. In the words of the rabbis, hunting was devalued. Why? Because they devalued power. The rabbis were trying to create a Jew who was devoted to study and the observance of mitzvot. And power was so threatening to those who had no autonomy. But over time, there developed a greater sensitivity to Esau. He was seen then as a victim, manipulated by his mother. He wasn't protected by his father either. And he wanted to recover the loss of the blessing and the birthright, and he wanted to do it through gaining favor through his hunting skills. There, perhaps, he could gain his father's favor. Later commentators saw him as the ancestor of Edom and later Rome, two very violent empires who oppressed the people Israel, the people and cultures that persecuted our people for generations. And so applying negative characteristics to Esau helped them make sense of their condition. This week in Vayishlach, we read about Jacob's journey back home and a feared meeting with his brother Esau. And because of the many deceptions in the past, he's very afraid. So he developed a strategy to meet his brother. He divided his camp into two. Perhaps half of his family and the things he owned would be preserved. He offers his brother gifts, cattle, and other possessions. The commentators historically viewed this as a model for conflict resolution. The brother who felt endangered would use a strategy of appeasement. Jacob referred to his brother, the one he deceived, as my Lord, and he proceeded to give Esau gifts. As we know the results, Esau's satisfied with his life, and so Esau says, I have enough. I have enough. And Jacob also believes that he gained enough. Jacob urges him to accept the gift and says something which places the whole encounter in a different light. He says, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, because you have received me favorably. This brother who he deceived and who he feared desperately before the encounter, all of a sudden evoked the face of God. Accept the prayers, the presents which I bring to you, for God favored me too, and I have plenty. And when Jacob urged him and urged him again, Esau accepted. So what's the text trying to teach? Perhaps it's that it's in reconciliation that God can be found. And taking the steps towards reconciliation can be the most difficult steps in a journey. And perhaps for there to be reconciliation, one has to be satisfied with oneself and with what one has. Both of these brothers became successful, and they had essentially everything they wanted and everything they needed: family, cattle, land. Peace can be made when there's a fair and level playing field. Hungry people cannot make peace until they're satiated. The one who has nothing cannot make peace. The one who has no land cannot make peace with the one who has all the land. To make peace, there has to be comfort with oneself. Another idea in this parsha: Jacob's conflict is a struggle with an adversary that may be seen as the dark or the selfish side of himself. In Jungian psychology, it's known as the shadow. Usually we repress our shadows, but now and again they come forward, and our willingness to understand them and confront them is what can lead to growth and to peace and comfort. When the adversary wanted to quit the fight, Jacob said, "No, I won't let you go unless you bless me." So what did Jacob mean by this? One possibility is the following: I'm not going to part from this experience until I find some meaning in it. I want to know why it is that I'm struggling, why it is that I'm suffering. Because we know that suffering in and of itself cannot heal. But suffering in which meaning can be found and is accepted as a part of the larger picture of our lives has a power to enable us to transform and grow, to become the whole people, the mature people that we need to be. One of the things that I've read in one of the Sidurim that's used in a house of Shiva is that death can be a gift when it teaches us to empathize with other people who lose. He needed to confront his shadow, and this is how he became a mature individual. Transformation or change of character can only take place when a person is willing to look at their mistakes, at their darker side. It can be really difficult, but that's the way we become whole, healthy, resilient adults. And so as I learned that perhaps this is the story of one of the most important values in all of Judaism. It's the value of teshuvah. We typically only think about it during the times of the high holidays, but teshuvah is part of our prayerful language every single day. Every single day we're told, you got to look at yourself, buddy. You got to see the mistakes that you have made. You can return to be the person that you ideally want to be. That's challenging. It's very challenging to commit ourselves to change because we want to be smart. We want to defend ourselves as we are. But none of us can do that fully. All of us can bring change. I think Jacob reached a point in his life where he couldn't go on anymore with his conscience. And perhaps he feared the result of his deception. His brother would kill him. and perhaps he would never find peace. So he goes to meet Esau, and it's on that journey that he has that dream, and then he wrestles. So we think he wrestles with an angel or he wrestles with Esau, but perhaps he's only wrestling with himself here. We don't know, but we know he needs to struggle in order to emerge as Israel. Israel, that's what he becomes, the one who struggles with God, the one who struggles with life's choice for goodness, kindness, respect, fairness, truth, and justice. And you can only imagine that although he emerged changed, he also emerged with the sense that life can be better, not by having more, but by being more. And this is essential. Acceptance of who you are, both that which is good about yourself and that which is troublesome. A willingness to see yourself honestly and a passion to continually be better. That's what makes the world better. And that's critical for our capacity to move forward. It's critical for peace and growth. At the end of the story, Jacob sees God's face. Where? In Esau. In the man who would have been his enemy, he sees the divine presence. So back to my initial proposition. Can we see ourselves in these texts? Can we begin to realize that those who are most threatened are not necessarily bad or evil, but represent something else, something else in their own willingness to perceive themselves, something that needs to change? We've learned that real reconciliation comes not through the change of the other, but real reconciliation comes when we can change ourselves. So Jacob then serves as a model, and Jacob is able to bring this offering to Esau. Esau's willing to accept it, to do his part in making peace. And Jacob sees God's presence in his twin's face. They hug, they kiss, and they each can move on in their own directions. Truly, this is a story of repentance, reconciliation, and hope. It's truly a beautiful story with all of its tension. But you know where this story begins? It begins with a dream. I'm convinced we need more dreamers today. Shabbat Shalom.